going to go over these items that I've listed here. I'm not going to read through all of them. But the idea of using a product like Bluebeam is really to eliminate printing things out on a regular basis. We all thought, I go back to the time when the PC first came out. I'm the old guy in the office, and we all thought it was going to eliminate paper, right? And all it did was generate more paper, because we could just keep printing and printing and printing and printing, and we are essentially drowning in paper now. So the idea of using a product like Bluebeam for communicating and markups and measurements and takeoffs and things of that sort is to try to eliminate all of that printing. So that's the premise behind going green. A little bit about the core functionality of Bluebeam. With this new release, there's a more intuitive interface, easy to use markups. There is something called a tool chest, where the same kind of symbology that you use over and over again can be stored. There's a markup list, which is sort of like an Excel spreadsheet. It can be exported. You can link that up with Excel, actually, if you're using the Extreme product. And an aspect of the software called Bluebeam Studio, which allows for either online collaboration through the sessions portion of it, or essentially a Bluebeam Dropbox or FTP site for storing what are called projects. So I'm going to show you both of those briefly at the end. Again, sessions is, excuse me, document-based online collaboration. Now, the documents or PDFs projects you can share and use really any kind of product whatsoever. What's new in this particular release? Again, I will mention these items. In theory, simplified navigation, for those of you who have memorized everything in older releases, it won't seem so simple initially, but you do get used to it fairly quickly. There is a new dynamics property toolbar, which means you don't have to open this huge palette taking up part of your screen. View and markup mode, we've eliminated something called Bluebeam View, and now in the file pull down there's an option to switch between markup, which is paid for, and View, which basically is the former free version of the software. The new markup summary dialog box, that has changed a bit when you're ready to export markups. Again, much more flexibility in projects in Bluebeam Studio, the ability to keep uploading projects or opening files from multiple projects. Keyboard shortcuts, for all of you who've been begging for keyboard shortcuts, Bluebeam added that in. And tutorials, so there's some tutorials at the beginning, which will be listed under the help dropdown. Okay, so demonstration, this is just to remind me to stop talking and start showing you something. So this is Bluebeam 2018, and for those of you that are used to the old interface, it's going to look pretty scary. That big command bar up at the top is gone, and we simply now have a pull-down list at the top. And these items are organized in what Bluebeam hopes is a fairly logical organization. For instance, all of the batch processes that used to be scattered throughout the menu in previous releases are all under batch. There used to be markup and measurement tools, again, scattered throughout various menus. Now they're all under tools, and you have your markups, your stamps, your measurement, all of those are organized here. Anything document related will be listed under document, and edit functions are mostly Windows type functions, although they did sneak the snapshot in here, which for me, I would have put it under tools. Maybe it'll move over there in the next release. The product does allow for a variety of what we call profiles, and so you can basically establish how you want your screen to look. I'm in one that's called Review Advanced right now. There's something called Review, Quantity Takeoff, and Field Issues. I had to create one for becoming a certified consultant called Flooring Takeoff. And then you can save and manage those. So you can arrange where you want things on the screen. There are toolbars that are available. If I right-click on a toolbar, you'll see all the different toolbars. You can drag those to the side of the screen, keep them at the top of the screen. You'll also notice the panels that used to be on the left and the right have shrunk, and we now have these icons. And if we click on the icon, that will expand the panel. So you can keep it open or closed depending on your particular needs at that particular time. You also have the ability to right-click on either side of the screen and show panels on the left or the right. So again, you can arrange the screen really any way you want, and then save that as your user profile. Okay. You can also open multiple files at the same time, so and organize those. So the first tool on the left, which is File Access, allows you down here at the bottom to have a list. Let's see if I can get my arrow. To have a list of recent files, but you can pin these into different categories. So the top category, called File Access, just pins the files from whatever folder they were in, but you can then start to organize them. So I have one here called Going Green for Today, and I have some others, maybe doing an overlay demo. And so I can have PDFs from a variety of different folders and have them all organized into one particular section. You can also open multiple files. You'll also notice that when a particular file, let me close this one and reopen it. When I open a file that, in this case, way down here on the bottom right says it's a 30 by 42, if I use my scroll wheel, it zooms in and out on that. If I were to open an 8.5 by 11 document, such as this one here, my scroll wheel now scrolls from one page to the other. There are some tools down here at the bottom that allow you to switch between those two. So if I click on Zoom to Extents, I will now have zooming in and out. And if I click on scrolling, then it will scroll. Now you can hold down the Control key to switch functionality. So you don't have to keep clicking on this down at the bottom if you don't want to. In addition to just simple 2D prints and let's say a text-based document, you also have the ability to open 3D-based prints. This is a print, if you've used Revit, this is a model of a house printed out of Revit, and there are a bunch of different tools here that allow you to move around in that particular file. You can spin it just using the left mouse button. You can zoom in and out and pan using the scroll wheel. You even have the ability to select items, and if I look at their properties, you'll actually see all of the Revit metadata for that particular item. You even have the ability to hide it. I could right-click on a particular item and tell it to hide. So it's a pretty neat piece of software. I can right-click and tell it to show all parts. I'm going to close this. Well, I'll close this one in a little bit here. I can actually, if I have two screens, you can drag off a file and drag it to a second screen. You can also drag that back onto the toolbar at the top. This guy, of course, isn't going to work for me. I'm trying to do a demo on this, but if I drag that off, I believe if I drag that back on, it'll reattach. Okay. So again, there are ways to go ahead and control where things are on your screen and control where you actually have files. Now, one of the aspects of Going Green is document comparison. Let me open up, this is A1.1.1. You might be getting in a revised document. Let's say you're getting a revised document from a consultant, if you're an architect, or if you're a builder, you're getting a revised document, let's say, from the architect. And you want to see what's going on between these documents or even among several documents. So I will open up the revision 1 document. And then down here at the bottom of the screen on the navigation bar, I can go ahead and split the screen either vertically or horizontally, and I have my 2 documents. Now, also down here on the navigation bar is the ability to synchronize. So if I turn off that tool and scroll in one view, you'll notice that it's not scrolling in the other view. On the other hand, if I click on synchronizing, you'll notice that it scrolls in both views to the exact same spot. Oh, actually, and that's because, let me switch back to the original here, because I'm seeing both the original and both screens. So you'll notice this area right here I'm looking at, and I can see, there's some changes there, right? So again, I don't have to print these out. I can see them on the screen. But maybe that isn't really the best way for you to discover something, right? I'm not quite sure where those changes have occurred. So another way to do that would be with these two documents open, or you don't even have to have them open. You can certainly search through them if they are just on your system somewhere, is the ability to come to the document pull down, and we have something called document compare. And comparing the two documents brings up a dialog box. Now there's a bunch of settings in here. You can choose document A and you can choose document B. So if they're not the two documents open, you can certainly choose that. You can choose an output folder, and there are a bunch of settings when I click on advanced that can control what my clouding will look like. But basically what you can do is at this point say, okay, compare those two documents. And again, if they're not quite the exact same size, you can use alignment tools to adjust that. I'll go ahead and pick OK. And what it does, it'll create a third document here. And this particular document, notice, will now have these areas clouded. I'll go ahead and let me close this and come back to my, see if I can get this guy to open. Oh, he's zoomed way out. Let's see if we can zoom in back in. It'll show you where those changes have occurred, right? It'll cloud them and you can very quickly see the changes. There's also a function called, let me not save this, let me reopen the other document. So I've got Rev 1 open. Let me go ahead and open the original. You also have a feature that allows you to do an overlay. So document overlay, if you don't want the clouding, you can choose your two documents. Again, they could be the ones that are open, or you can choose different ones by choosing add. There's even batch compare in the Bluebeam Revu Extreme product. And then you use your complementary colors for comparison. Now, I know the rest of the world is going to be totally fine with this, but I, along with some other guys, usually, it's usually not the women that have this, have a red-green color weakness. Now, my wife will claim that I'm blind, but no, I actually am okay with stoplights, but these two colors don't work for me. So if you want, you can click on those and change those. So what I could do is I could change that color, whatever it is, to, let's say, blue, which I definitely can see. And I can click on that color, which I think is green, so don't laugh, and I could change that to yellow. And now with those complementary colors, I can go ahead and say OK, and it will generate a new file. Anywhere the complementary colors are laying on top of each other, of course, you get black. And you now, anything that exists from the original drawing that isn't in the revision is blue, and anything that's in the revision is going to be yellow. Okay? Now, the rest of the world, you're fine with red and green. It's fine with me. You don't have to actually change those. Okay, and you could save that as a new drawing as well. Okay, so again, that's another way to avoid having to print out documents to compare them. So we also, let's see what I've got open and set. Oh, okay. So another thing that we can do, let me show you adding what I would call bookmarks. So you may want to change names of your pages, or when you get a set of documents, they may not be as useful as you might like in terms of naming. you'll notice that the pages in here, and there are lots of pages, 12 pages. You can also see the number of pages here at the bottom. And you also have the ability to go to the last page or the first page in the set. Anyway, you'll notice the page numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you wanted to get to a particular page for a particular reason, it's really not that easy to do that from here. So there are a couple of ways we can rename things. From right in thumbnails, we have ability to create page labels, but there's also this interesting feature that's called bookmarks. Now, bookmarks will allow me, let me just zoom up here a little bit. Bookmarks will allow me to add bookmarks, or I can create. So I'm going to use the Create Bookmark tool. And I could use page labels that I've already created, or I can use what are called page regions. So what I'll do is I'll select a rectangular region, which would be the page number, click in there, add a space, click Add, again, drag a rectangle around, and go ahead and pick OK. And I'll go ahead and pick OK to that, and it generates these page bookmarks, right? So I've got a bookmark that can take me to a particular page. What's also nice is with the bookmarks, I could zoom up here to, let's say, view 2 on this particular page, and I could right-click on that bookmark, and I could add a child bookmark, and I could call it view 2, building section, and you get the idea, at, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then once I have that, I could go ahead and right-click on it, and see if I can right-click on that, and say to set it to the current view. So now that's set to the current view. So I could go back to a different page in the set. I could come back to the whole page. I can come back and click on the bookmark. And it looks like I was changed my zoom at the last second there. See if I can get that to set to current view. See if we can do that. Okay, try that, try that. It still wants to shift on me. Okay, but you get the idea that you can go ahead and quickly zoom in on a particular section and create this as a bookmark. Once you have these bookmarks, you could then come back, let's say, to the thumbnails, and I could quickly go ahead and click Create Page Labels. And I could do the same thing, page region, or I could just go ahead and choose the bookmarks that I've already used. So you can go ahead and see that those now have been added as names to it. Okay. Let me show you batch linking. So that's a way to do your page labels. Okay, so I'm going to show you another thing that's fairly interesting, because you'll notice that we have these things like callouts here. And the callouts don't really have any link in them. So if we came over to the right side of the screen, we have hyperlinks. Now there are some hyperlinks that have been created in the file already manually, and these hyperlinks will allow me to go to a particular location, and you can create those on your own. But you'll notice that there's hyperlinks down below here, and there aren't any in this particular file. So I'm going to open up a different set. Let me open up this set over here, which I opened before. And actually, that is not the set I want to open. Let me open this set. All right. And let me show you the hyperlinking for this. So I'm going to go to a different page. Let's come back over to this page here. And what I want to do is I want to use the number to generate my hyperlinks. So I'm going to come down to the batch option. This is in the Extreme product. And I will go ahead and choose the under batch link and create a new link. Now what I'm going to do is add my open files. I don't need the file that is the batch link and extract, so I'm going to go ahead and take that one out, and I'll go ahead and pick next. I'm then going to select a page region, by creating a rectangle around there, pick OK. Now, you can make adjustments to that. So for instance, you can filter if for some reason you want to filter from the start or the end, or create a custom filter, which I don't want to because maybe the numbering is not exactly the way you want to try to generate your labels. I can go ahead and pick generate, and what it'll do is search through the drawing set for anything that looks like that numbering. Once it finishes, it'll go through and tell you where all of these are, and if there's any issues with them. You have the ability to go ahead and choose your link options. In there, you can include a property appearance for your links. And I'll go ahead and run this. And what this will do in a matter of a few seconds is it'll generate a whole bunch of links for me. In fact, it created 74 links. So I'll go ahead and pick finish and close. So now, if I went back to, let me zoom extents here. If I go back to the cover sheet, you'll notice that all of these links have been created. Now, there is no page 4.1 or 10 or 13 in here, so you can quickly see what was included and not. And then if I click on that, it will take me to that particular location. You'll also notice that there are all of these hyperlinks now down in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Right? So all those hyperlinks. Now, let me close this guy up. If I take this set, let me go back to the first page here. I can take this set, let me do a quick save as on this file, save as. And we'll go ahead and put that in my sales demo folder for today. And I will go ahead and replace that file that's there. Okay. So there may be times where you need to take this set, which is a whole series of files combined together, and maybe you'd like to break it apart. Or you can take a bunch of files that are separate and combine them together in a couple of different ways. I've got a folder under my demo files called extracted pages. So you'll notice there's nothing in there at the moment. So what I'm going to do is over here in the thumbnail section, do a Control-A and select all of the pages. And then what I will do is go ahead and right-click, and I will tell it to extract those pages. Now at the moment, I'm telling it to extract 33 pages. I'm going to extract them as separate files. I'm going to use page labels to name them, overwrite existing files, not open them, and update my hyperlinks to these relative paths. So I'll go ahead and pick OK. I will choose that empty folder and go ahead and pick select that, and it goes ahead and does that. So if I go back to that folder, magically, I now have 33 files in there, okay? So let me close that. And I can go ahead and open one of them. Let me say I open the cover sheet in there. So actually, that isn't what I want. What I want is open. And I'll go over to that folder, come down to it, and extracted pages. Let's open the cover. Now, you'll notice for thumbnails, it's only that one sheet, but you'll notice the hyperlinks are still there. So if I want to get to 1.1.1, I click on that, and you'll notice it opens that file up for me as well. So not only did it extract the pages, but it also maintained the hyperlinks for me. Okay. So that's kind of a nice feature in the software. So a lot of people have the impression that PDF documents are sort of rigidly fixed, that there's no editing possible. Let me go ahead and open up the course outline I use for teaching. Close this other one. So this is from a Word document. As long as it is generated as a vector-based versus a raster-based file, we can do text editing. If not, you first have to run it through OCR, optical character recognition in the software. Now, you have a bunch of ways to edit this. The first thing you could do is you could go to the File pull down and you could export this, and I could export this to a Word document. I could edit in a Word document and I could reprint it using a PDF driver. And keep in mind that PDF is PDF, so anything I'm doing inside of Bluebeam Revu, I also have the ability to open up in any other editor. But let's say I wanted to edit the text. So this course introduces. I might want to, you know what, I'd like to say will introduce. So I can come over to the edit dropdown, edit dropdown, the PDF content, and I can come down and choose edit text. So I can come in and highlight the word introduces and type in will introduce. And voila, that is now what the document will have in there, okay? So you can easily edit a document after the fact without actually having the original document. You also have the ability to add what are called headers and footers to a document if you want. That would be under Document, and that is going to be under the Headers and Footers section. So headers and footers are right there, and we can choose Add. Now I can say I want to add to all the pages, so I'll go ahead and say Next, and we get this nice screen. So if I start putting things in over here, I can choose I could start typing in, or I could choose things like page number, or the date, or Bates number, or file data. So maybe I want to choose page number, and I want it to say page 1 of N. And now I have that at the top. I can start to reduce the margin. Right? For the bottom, maybe I'll go ahead and put a date on there, and you can choose your format. So now that's at the bottom, and I could go ahead and pick OK. And now on each of my pages in the set, that information will be there. Right? So that is useful if you need to very quickly add headers and footers. So I want to show you some tools for markups. You have the ability in the software to create a variety of markups. Now you'll notice there's a toolbar here that has text and highlighters and clouds with text and just clouds and just text boxes and stamps and a whole variety of other things. You also have under tools your markup tools. So for instance, if you wanted to just put text in, you have that. If you want to do a call out, that will give you an arrowhead and a text box, and you can go ahead and type whatever text you want in there. One of the nice features in this particular release I like is the ability to shrink the text box. So that is a nice feature. It was probably in the last feature of the last release of the software, but I just never saw it in there. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. I just never really noticed it. Oh, let me close some of these things up on either side of the screen. Other markups you can do, for instance, from the top, I'll just click the cloud. Another nice feature in this particular release, and again, it was probably in the past release, I just never noticed it, is this repeat function right here. And if I turn on the repeat function, instead of me having to go back to that cloud tool each time, I can put a cloud in, and that stays active, right? So I can continue to add clouds to the document. You also have, there's one here with a cloud and with text. Now, one of the things that has changed in this particular release is as you're placing your markups, there used to be this properties panel, and you had to have this open. And there was this huge amount of screen territory taken up. But in this particular release, we now have at the top of the screen, that was not exactly what I wanted to do. Let's see if we can get that back. There we go. At the top of the screen, maybe it doesn't like me being in that particular tool. At the top of the screen, we have the properties bar. So as I click on that, you'll notice I have all kinds of properties available. I can change the color of the lines, the density of the line, the type of line used, the shape, the size of the curves. I can have a fill pattern if I want. So there's all these options here that are available rather than over here that are available. Of course, the most important everyone should keep in mind is the one called subject. And when we go into training, I go into a little more detail about that. But anyway, I can go ahead and place a cloud at this point. We can drag off a piece of text, and I can add, review. This is also fairly easily customizable afterwards, so you can go ahead and pick that. I can change the line color. I could add a fill color if I wanted to. Right? I could change the opacity of the fill color. I could do the same thing with the lines for the text, and I can even change the color of the text if I want. Right? We could even put a box around the text. So we've got a box. It's 100%, that's its shape, and it is currently 0 point. Let me go ahead and use my favorite little tool to shrink that up. Okay. We have the, if you went ahead and put in another box, let's say I put that in again, and again, I haven't saved that particular tool yet. You do have the ability with the ability to adjust that particular shape by using the format painter. So again, if I select this particular item here, you'll have this brush up here at the top called the format painter, and I can take that and paint that onto that particular item. So if you have a box or a markup that you want to use to paint onto others, you can certainly do that. Another thing that you can do, which is useful, is there may be several items. Perhaps I have this text as a separate item. Let's see if I can move the whole thing here. Not going to let me move the whole thing. Let me go ahead and take the arrowhead and move that over into there. And I'll drag the text over here a bit. Oops, see if I can grab the text. There we go. So I might have a cloud. I might have this text, and I might have the cloud separate. So if I use the Shift key and they're combined together, I can now right-click, and I could go ahead and choose Group. And with them as a group now, I have the ability to move them or copy them and use them as a single tool. So you can combine a variety of different shapes to create these kinds of tools. The other thing that's nice is the markup list, the tool chest, not the markup list. And the tool chest has preset tools in it. It keeps track, of course, of the most recent tools you've used, but you can also create a custom tool chest over here. So I have the ability to grab a particular markup, and I could go ahead and right-click, and I could say, add that to my tool chest. So I could say, add that to Reed's Tools. There it is. I can click on it and now place that in the file. These can be exported and imported to other machines. You also have the ability to double-click that, and gives you the flexibility to create a different shaped cloud and different text as well. So you can use the original, or you can double-click and change it to whatever you would like. Okay. One other tool I want to show you. Another thing you can do with the markups, just quickly, is let's say you've been out in the field and you've noticed that maybe there's an electrical panel over here that might need some work. So I can select that particular item, and right click, and I have the ability to use capture. And I could do it from a camera if I have one attached, let's say using my iPod or iPad rather, and I can click from file as well, and I can go out and find a file. I could go ahead and choose this image and add that to that particular markup. So you'll notice I now have this little icon here at the end of the text box, and if I double click that, it'll bring up the image. You can also insert the images separately if you want as well. Another nice thing that you can do, so tool chests are very valuable. Another nice thing you can do with your set is, let's say you want to ask for a clarification on a particular area. So for instance, maybe this particular bathroom, I would like to ask for a clarification on. So rather than printing something out and mailing it or faxing it or emailing it to the architect, you can go ahead and capture this as a separate item. I would go ahead and use the snapshot tool. So that is under the edit and snapshot. And I'll go ahead and drag a rectangular shape around there. And then inside of the thumbnails, I could right click and insert a new blank page. Now I could also insert a page that would have my company's title block on that. So I could certainly do either or. You can set the size. You can also set whether it's portrait or landscape. And then onto this new page, which always zooms to some weird scale, I could right click and paste in that screen capture that I just did. Now there's no hyperlinking back to the original, but it's a very easy way to take a piece of a document and add it as a separate page. The markup list at the bottom of the screen is keeping track of all of the markups I have put into my file. This markup list is highly customizable. There's a drop-down list here that will list the columns that are available. You can click on those to turn those on and off. You also have the ability to import markups. So if you've given this file to several other people outside the office and they've put their markups in, you can go ahead and incorporate those markups. You don't have to export them first or have the files open. You also have the ability to export markups to a file, so lots of flexibility. You also have the ability to create custom columns. So in your markup list, there's a drop-down, and under markups, under columns, you have the ability to create custom ones by going to Manage Columns. Custom columns will allow you to add a bunch of different kinds. So there could be a text column, a number column, a formula column, a date column, a choice, or a check mark. So you would have the ability to, with a choice, to add different items such as a person's name, or let's say a flooring or a wall material that could be an option for a particular markup. So let's say you're doing floor areas, you put in an area tool, you could then have a choice column that says this is tile, this is wood, this is concrete. So lots of flexibility there. Speaking of measurement tools, let me show you some of those. Now, when we start using measurement tools, we have the tools, and we have markups and stamps and measure. So measurement tools, the first thing we should do before anything else is calibration. And what calibration does will allow us to set the scale for that particular file or portion of a file or a sheet in the file or a portion of the sheet in the file. So the Calibrate tool is going to ask me to pick 2 points. Obviously, the farther apart they are, the more accurate things will be. And then to tell it what that is. So this is 23 feet, and it is 0.5 inches. And I go ahead and pick OK. And if we want to verify that, if I click on those 2 points, if I click on those 2 points using one of my measure tools, so I go ahead and measure length, for instance, and measure from here to here, it'll tell me it's 6 feet 5. So we've calibrated it successfully. If a sheet has a variety of different scale views on it, each of these views has the ability to have a different scale to it. So if I came to my measurement panel, down here at the bottom, you'll notice I have different viewports. And these different viewports can all be calibrated so that if you're doing area takeoffs or measurements or things of that sort, each of those views will allow you to set the scale. For my measurement tools, I can go ahead and, if I wanted to do simple things like rectangular areas, I can simply come to Tools, Measure, and come down to Area, and I could pick 2 points and drag. And it'll put my area in. I can also measure a variety of other ways. Okay, I'm starting to run out of time, so let me just show you, last but not least, the Studio aspect of the software. You would log into Bluebeam Studio, and then over here on the side, there are 2 options. You have what are called sessions and what are called projects. And the sessions basically will bring up a PDF. You can have up to 500 users and up to 5,000 documents. If you've got projects that big, congratulations. And you collaborate online, so you can invite people, or they can simply use the session number to log in, and you can set permissions for them. You also have what are called projects, and projects you can upload Word documents and AutoCAD drawings and Revit files and PDFs and Excel spreadsheets, and then you check those out, work on them, and check them back in, and those can then be synchronized back to your office as well.